One of the characteristics of Meghan's way of speaking is that she speaks or pretends to speak on behalf of a community, as opposed to just speaking for herself. We, she says, not I.
Because we all know what's at stake this year. I know it. I think all of you certainly know it. And if you're here on this fun event with us, then you are just as mobilized and energized to see the change that we all need and deserve. So I'm inspired to see all of the work that you're doing in your communities.
Meghan doesn't even say what the change that we all need and deserve is, or what it is that supposedly inspires her specifically. To Meghan and most politicians, it's about using the right, nice-sounding words that appeal to people's emotion. It's not about substance that appeals to logic.
Mobilized and energized to see the change. I'm inspired.
Groups are easier to control than individuals. If people see themselves as members of a group, it's easier to play on their indignation and get them to do something. In this case, voting the way Meghan wants her group members to vote. Next, Meghan uses this tactic. Notice how she keeps saying we, not I.
The 19th Amendment, which of course gave women the right to vote, but not all women, and specifically not women of color. Even today, we are watching so many women in different communities who are marginalized. It's just simply not okay. And when we look at the attempts of voter suppression and what that's doing, it's all the more reason we need each of you to be out there supporting each other. And we all have to be out there mobilizing voices heard.
Meghan makes serious claims without giving examples. That's because this isn't about argumentation, but about holding on to the indignation by holding on to the past events, past discrimination, to make women think that it's the same struggling we today as it was back then, making the past match the present via rhetorical shortcuts.
And that is, it's just simply not okay.
Yes, everything about this way of presupposing community is simple, much too simple. So it's unsurprising that Meghan can't think of anything else to say.
And that is, and we look at the attempts of voter suppression.
Voter suppression is a tactic used to prevent specific groups of people from voting. This is a pretty serious accusation without backing. But when it comes to playing on people's indignation, it appears that some people think that anything goes.
Obviously faced with a lot of problems in our world right now, both in the physical world and in the digital world. If we aren't part of the solution, we are part of the problem.
Meghan appears to make subtle hints at what she's experienced in the digital world, since she even makes the distinction between the physical and digital world in the first place. Good thing she's created a collective we then, so it doesn't look like she's alone in facing these problems. Meghan used the same tactic in one of the most authentic and organic panel discussions I've ever seen. In the following, notice how Meghan's actually talking about herself, but disguises it as a general problem.
The systemic change has to happen at the same time as the cultural change is happening, because if you're reading something terrible about a woman, why are you sharing it with your friends? Why are you choosing to put that out in the world?
Maybe because it's true. Maybe because innate characteristics don't determine whether or not you can criticize someone. Maybe because people have ears and know manipulation when they hear it.
And so the collective of all of us working together, understanding the shared goal that is in the best interest of our shared humanity is just key. You can't do it by yourself, and I don't think you want to.
Translation time. The shared goal, another manipulative presupposition by the way, is to silence the voices that go against the group's voice. This exposes the self-serving motives behind groupthink-based rhetoric or community discourses. It's really about getting certain demographics to conform to the speaker's ideas, disguised as doing what's best for the common good. Inclusion and empowerment all the way, as long as your opinions don't conflict with the group's opinions. How freeing is that?
It doesn't necessarily matter what the issue is that speaks to your heart. Maybe it's the environment, maybe it's the rights of women, maybe it's the rights of children, maybe it's healthcare, whatever it is. We can make the difference in this election, and we will make the difference in this election.
I like when things that are so obvious that they're unnecessary to state are delivered as brave, profound, and empowering messages.
It doesn't necessarily matter what the issue is that speaks to your heart.
Is that so?
Maybe it's
It's
the
no
rights of women,
coincidence
maybe
that
it's the
Meghan
rights of
mentioned
children,
some of the
maybe it's
most
healthcare.
broadly accepted political issues, and not issues that would get group members to disagree with each other.
It
In
doesn't
that regard,
necessarily
Meghan's
matter.
reservation necessarily is worth noting. This reservation suggests that it actually does matter, just not necessarily, whatever that means. I like the deliberate, overly emotional language, though.
What the issue is that speaks to your heart, the change that we would all like to see for the better for our country, and watching all of you do your part in whatever way to just encourage each other to have your voices heard, have our voices heard. In the fraught moment right now that we find our nation, exercising your right to vote isn't simply being part of a solution, it's being part of a legacy.
It seems we're going in circles already.
The change that to have your voices heard, to have our voices heard.
Which again underlines that this organic and inspiring video message is about saying the right words. It's not about substance. What fraught moment? What's fraught about it and how? When speaking in such broad terms, everything could be said to be part of a legacy, including how we get out of bed in the morning to go to work. What matters is what we do and stand for specifically, but Meghan's video message is intentionally devoid of specifics.
Creating community, fostering community, supporting community. Meghan, so much of your work is centered around uplifting community. What is it about community building that you feel is so vital?
Community in your communities, for your communities.
What is it about community?
What it is that community discourses are the fastest ways to get everyone from a certain demographic to think the same and alienate those that don't. Self-serving rhetoric disguised as doing what's best for the given demographic.
Why are you sharing it with your friends? Oftentimes as women, you may agree with this, the way that we see ourselves is reflected back to us, sometimes accurately and sometimes, much to our disservice, inaccurately in what we see in media.
Meghan uses the pronoun we, associating with the audience, which makes it look like she's not alone in thinking this. The only thing that's important for Meghan is to get the audience to look at themselves as members of a group first and foremost, rather than as individuals. Which is ironic considering that Meghan and like-minded celebrities want to free and empower individuals.
Let's talk about the Dove Self-Esteem Project. You know, when Dove reached out to me, it was so, as I was saying to you, it's just so easy for me to jump on board with this, the conversation of feminism and women feeling empowered, but to plant those seeds starting really young. And so, yeah, it feels organic and right.
We don't often talk about men being imprisoned by gender stereotypes, and that when they are free, things will change for women. It is time that we all perceive gender on a spectrum.
As long as your opinions don't differ from the opinions of the group, freedom and empowerment are great, I guess.
Sometimes accurately and sometimes, much to our disservice, inaccurately in what we see in media.
This clip demonstrates the power of association. Meghan's actually talking about herself, how she thinks she's portrayed inaccurately, but disguises it as a general problem. Meghan has a habit of defending herself under the guise of speaking for everyone in the group she's always desperately trying to constitute.
How have we culturally allowed that to be the case? There's nothing wrong with talking about a woman's success or her ambition. Why is it culturally we are equipping girls and women to think that if you are ambitious, there's something negative about that word?
Thus, the rhetoric of Meghan and like-minded celebrities and politicians is actually not individually freeing or empowering, because it's designed to keep people in that place inside the group. That's exactly why they monopolize terms like inclusion, empowerment, and freedom before the opposing side accuses them of being proponents of the opposite.
Meghan, will you tell the story about when you wrote that letter to P&G? Because I don't know if everyone's heard it, but it's such a great story at a very young age, what you did.
That's so fun. Yes. I was 11 years old.
On Meghan and Harry's inclusive website, Meghan brands herself as champion of human rights and gender equity. Her lifelong advocacy for women remains a constant thread in her humanitarian and business ventures. So it's quite revealing that when it comes to describing what her humanitarian efforts entail specifically, this is the story she mentions, a story from 3 decades ago which isn't monumental in any way.
When I was 11 years old.
And I had seen a commercial on TV for a dishwashing liquid, and the boys in my class at the time said, it said, women all over America are fighting greasy pots and pans. And the boys said, yeah, that's where women belong, in the kitchen. And at 11, I just found that infuriating and wrote lots of letters and put pen to paper, and they ended up changing the commercial to people all over America. And, you know,
one of the many reasons why it isn't so incredible and brilliant to be upset about this commercial is that the original tagline didn't exclude that men could also be fighting greasy pots and pans. But obviously the company's going to address their target audience, just like commercials can be geared towards men. But anything to brand yourself as philanthropic, I guess. It makes me wonder if the other panelist was trolling Meghan by getting her to tell this story.
Meghan, will you tell the story about when you wrote that letter to P&G?
What do you think? And next, Meghan actually uses this story, or non-story, to give general advice. Sounds like she was truly offended by this commercial and didn't see it as an opportunity to act as a humanitarian.
It's funny to look back at it now, because that was before social media, where you had a reach that was so much greater. It was just an 11-year-old with a pen and paper. But it just, I guess, goes to show that if you know that there's something wrong and you're using your voice to advocate in the direction of what is right, that can really land and resonate and make huge change for a lot of people. So your voice is not small. It just needs to be heard.
By contrasting her accomplishment to today's social media, she makes it seem that more impressive. Not that she's ever needed help in guiding people's impression of her.
That I realized the magnitude of my actions at the age of 11.
Using your voice is...
Women don't need to find a voice. They have a voice.
Platitudes over content every time. Click the like button and subscribe for more empowering videos. See you next time.